Good evening. You're watching ARIRANG News at 8. It's Thursday, January 9th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am Geun-hye. Now, we begin this evening with some disappointing news out of North Korea. The reclusive state has turned down South Korea's offer for talks on possible reunions for families separated by the Korean War. Pyongyang did, however, left the door open for future dialogue under certain preconditions. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports.
North Korea has rejected South Korea's proposal to discuss a resumption of family reunions for those separated during the Korean War. Thursday's response came 3 days after South Korean President Park Geun-hye expressed hopes of holding the humanitarian event sometime during the Lunar New Year holiday, which falls in the last week of January. In a statement on Thursday, the North said there had been no change in Seoul's warlike posture and said for a successful round of humanitarian exchanges to take place, the right atmosphere must be created. Although not named directly, Pyongyang seems to be referring to the upcoming joint military exercise between Seoul and Washington that takes place annually between February and March. It also said that in order for the two Koreas to discuss the matter of family reunions, they must also address issues raised by the North, most likely the resumption of South Korean tours to the Mount Kumgang resort. The North, however, did not slam the door shut on family reunions altogether. The statement said the two sides could meet for talks when the South is willing to discuss the issues proposed by the North. South Korea's Ministry of Unification expressed regret over North Korea's rejection, saying humanitarian issues should be dealt with separately.
It is regrettable that North Korea is linking annual military drills with humanitarian issues. South Korea maintains its stance that the issue of family reunions will be dealt with separately from the issues raised by the North.
The Unification Ministry called on North Korea to accept Seoul's proposal for talks on resuming family reunions and added that the North should show its sincerity in mending ties with the South through action and not just through words. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Former NBA player Dennis Rodman has apologized for suggesting that Korean-American missionary Kenneth Bae deserved what he got when he was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in North Korea. In a statement released through his publicist on Thursday, Rodman said he was sorry to Bae's family and that he had been drinking, was very stressed when he made the comments during a CNN interview earlier this week. The family of Bae said they were outraged by the NBA Hall of Famer's comments, and they weren't the only ones. In fact, Rodman's behavior since arriving in Pyongyang earlier this week has been raising eyebrows across the globe. Take a look at this.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
On Wednesday, Rodman sang happy birthday to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during an exhibition match between former NBA players and a North Korean team. This was Rodman's fourth trip to North Korea since February last year. And diplomatic row between China and Japan is entering a new phase. While Beijing is whipping up global condemnation of Japanese Prime Minister Abe's controversial war shrine visit, Tokyo is in full-on defense mode, issuing explanations to world leaders whenever and wherever it can. Han Da-eun tells us more.
What started out as bickering between China and Japan over Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine is quickly morphing into a high-level diplomatic war of words. The shrine is highly controversial as it honors several Class A war criminals, as well as scores of those found guilty of lesser crimes. Chinese diplomats are using all possible channels to ensure the world knows full well that Abe's visit was unacceptable, while Japanese officials are busy justifying Abe's move whenever they have a chance to sit down with world leaders. China's ambassador to the U.S., Cui Tiankai, during a press hearing, criticized Abe, saying he should take full responsibility for the deterioration of China-Japan relations, while the ambassador to Canada, Zhang Junsai, also condemned the visit during an interview with a local media outlet. Chinese ambassador to Britain, Liu Xiaoming, went even further. In a letter published in Britain's Daily Telegraph, Liu compared Abe's visit to an evil wizard of the Harry Potter series, saying, "If militarism is like the haunting Voldemort of Japan, the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo is a kind of Horcrux, representing the darkest parts of that nation's soul." Japan is mounting a strong defense to China's diplomatic offensive. Japan's Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida, during a trip to Europe earlier this week, told his Spanish counterpart that Abe visited the shrine to console the nation's war dead, as well as to make a pledge that Japan will never trigger a war again. Although Tokyo's #1 ally, the U.S., has already expressed its disappointment, Japanese diplomats are busy attempting to soothe ties with Washington. Against such a backdrop, Japan's director nominee of the newly established National Security Council, Shotaro Yachi's visit to Washington next week is gaining more attention than it might have done before. Experts say China and Japan's row has the potential to become even more emotionally charged, as the two nations' foreign policies are based on strong nationalism. And this, they say, would further escalate already heightened tensions in Northeast Asia. 한다은 아리랑 뉴스.
As South Korean Foreign Minister Geun-hye has wrapped up his 3-day trip to Washington, which included meetings with high-level U.S. officials, including Secretary of State John Kerry and Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel. Yoon used his U.S. visit to discuss North Korea and historical and territorial tensions in Northeast Asia. For more on the Seoul-Washington dialogue, we go one-on-one with Dr. Kim Hyun-wook, professor at Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Right, so this was the first of Foreign Minister Yoon's overseas diplomatic activities this year. How significant was his Washington visit, and what's your overall assessment of the visit?
Well, I think the most important factor of this visit lies in its timing. The timing was that the U.S. was concerned about South Korea's positions between the U.S. and China. Many experts and policymakers warned that South Korea's position is too close to China compared to the United States. Second thing, the background, I think, is that before Abe Shinzo's visit to Yasukuni, there were criticisms by the United States on South Korea rather than Japan about the worsening relationship between Japan and Korea. So I think after Abe Shinzo's visit to Yasukuni, this was a very good time for him to visit the United States, both to consolidate the relationship between U.S. and South Korea, and also to mention some of the points about Japan's current moves to become a militarist country. So I think there have been important, elements that they discussed. Several would be that the U.S. and South Korea relationship is very firm, ready for a North Korean threat. And also one thing particular and unique at this time was that both agreed upon deepening consultations about how to deal with the uncertain North Korean situations.
But Minister Yoon openly expressed concerns to Kerry about the historical issues getting in the way of reconciliation and cooperation in the region, and an apparent criticism of Japan. But John Kerry seems to be rather reserved in his stance towards Japan's moves. So what's your take on that?
Well, in the private meeting between Yoon Byung-se and John Kerry, I think they definitely have, discussed about the concerns about Japan, but I think it's a very clever move for the United States not to mention about Japan, because of course historical issues, U.S. is worrying about Japan's move, but strategically Japan is a very important partner to the United States. The reason why U.S. concerns that it was disappointed by Abe Shinzo's visit to Yasukuni was not only because it was a bad move and move against the historical righteousness, but also it's because it was a move that breaks the U.S., Korea, Japan trilateral dialogue and collaboration. For the United States, which are still trying to maintain order in Asia, but still does not have enough capabilities, so needs a lot of assistance from its allies. definitely Japan and Korea is important partners to the United States. And also now South Korea is in the middle between China and the United States. The U.S. needs some more stronger trilateral collaboration to move South Korea to the side of the United States. So I think the U.S. was making a lot of efforts to strengthen the trilateral collaboration, making the Japan-Korea relationship much better and restore the relationship. But at that time, Abe Shinzo visited Yasukuni, which I think definitely made the U.S. pissed off. So I think that was the U.S. position. U.S. definitely needs to, kind of criticize Japan, but still have to think about the current strategic, strategic policies and positions in Asia.
More on that regional tension, it seems that year 2014 is going to be another tumultuous year with geopolitical rivalries, as you've mentioned, between the United States and Japan on one side and China on the other. What's your outlook of this regional conflict?
Well, the current U.S. policy towards Asia, the rebalancing towards Asia is very, very slow, incremental. I think the foremost reason is that, of course, the U.S. needs to engage military in this region, but the foremost reason and purpose of its policy is to have its economic interests maximized in Asia. So I think in order for that economic interest, the U.S. is forming TPP, and also trying to, make the Asian countries to follow the economic rules, of the United States, so and so forth. So, of course, the U.S. is pretty much, now have to think about the domestic economic issues and Middle East issues. So I think the U.S. policy towards Asia in this region, I think, will be very incremental. But the problem is Japan. I mean, Japan, I think, based upon the support from the U.S.-Japan alliance, is now trying to revert back to the, great power position in Asia vis-a-vis China. And also, I think Japan is already thinking about the Asia in which the U.S. capability is pretty much down and not enough to support Japan. So I think Japan might be thinking about, having its own capabilities to stand up on its feet in Asia. So Japan is the problem. I mean, Japan, I think, would continue to, revise its constitutions to become a normal state. And I think that policy is pretty much, confronting with the, Chinese policies. China, I think, as we witnessed in the, reformulating its CADIS, which is air defense identification zone, I think it'll continue to expand its core interests and spheres. I mean, it's each moves along with its long-term policies, trying to expand into a global power, expand into a maritime power. So I think in that sense, the confrontation is inevitable, I think. So I think we have to look very carefully all these kinds of moves along with North Korean affairs.
Definitely. And given that there are multiple layers of conflicts, as you mentioned, what sort of strategic position should South Korea take?
Well, I think the current moves and postures of the current government of Korea is very wise. I mean, to have a balanced approach between China and the United States and Japan on the other side, and also try to maximize our interests as we have experienced in the Korean Air Defense Identification Zone, which was very wise moves in diplomatic aspect. But I think at the same time, we have to continue to think about how we can consolidate U.S.-Korea alliance. What kinds of new roles we can have in U.S.-Korea alliance. Even though it is not easy to redefine the alliance's role in regional terms, only the fact that we are talking and discussing these kinds of roles between U.S. and Korea, I think would be a big leverage to China. So I think that's one thing I can think of. And next thing is that we also have to look very carefully what the North Korean domestic affairs would evolve in the future. Very uncertain and possible to lead to instability. So we have to be ready and be more flexible some unexpected thing can happen. So we have to get ready for anything happen, any events that could happen from North Korea.
So stronger Korea-U.S. alliance and also looking out for uncertainties and variables like North Korea. All right, thank you very much, Professor Kim, for joining us this evening.
Okay, thank you very much.
Touch base with journalists, experts, and analysts who are taking the pulse of Asia's heartbeat.
South Korea's defense minister.
In a lively half hour, join ARIRANG's Geun-hye for the day's top stories, current affairs, business, technology trends, plus global weather forecasts and more. ARIRANG News. Every weeknight, live on ARIRANG TV.
At the nation's top office, President Park Geun-hye's first overseas trip of the new year will take her to India and Switzerland. She's set to embark on a 9-day tour of the two nations next Wednesday. Our presidential office correspondent, Geun-hye, has the details.
The creative economy will be the key theme of President Park's trip to India and Switzerland. The concept encourages collaboration between creative ideas and the science and technology sector to produce new growth engines for the economy. In India, President Park is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and the two are expected to discuss cooperation in the sectors of security, trade and investment, and most importantly, science and information communications technology, the key parts of a creative economy. Further cooperation in this field with India, a huge market with a population of 1.2 billion, is expected to give a boost to President Park's vision for a creative economy, which is one of the major goals of her 3-year economic reform plan unveiled earlier this week. In the Swiss capital of Bern, President Park will hold a bilateral summit with President of the Swiss Confederation, Didier Burkhalter, and the two are expected to seek ways to expand cooperation in various fields, especially science and technology and vocational training, sectors that are strengths for the European country. President Park's trip marks the first state visit by a Korean president to Switzerland. During her stay in that country, she will also attend the World Economic Forum in Davos and give a keynote speech on the creative economy and entrepreneurship. The presidential office of Cheong-won says President Park plans to introduce her economic reform plan, which centers around the creative economy, and promote Korea's economic and investment environment to bring more foreign businesses to the country. Geun-hye, ARIRANG News.
Korea's central bank has left its key interest rate unchanged at 2.5% for the 8th straight month in January, citing improving economic conditions at home and abroad. The bank has also kept its growth forecast of 3.8% for this year. ARIRANG's Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Some economists have been betting on a rate cut this month, but that did not happen. Following its monthly monetary policy meeting on Thursday, the central bank kept its key interest rate steady at 2.5% for the 8th straight month. The bank said the local and global economies are showing clearer signs of recovery. It added that the Korean economy is very close to reaching its potential growth rate of nearly 4%, offering a growth outlook of 3.8% for this year and 4% for next year.
If the government works on improving its structural productivity by easing regulations, for example, the local economy will be able to achieve a growth rate of nearly 4%.
Despite the recovery momentum, the bank revised down the nation's inflation rate estimate for this year to 2.3%, down 0.2 percentage points from its October forecast.
The nation's low inflation rate stems from prices for international oil, commodities, and domestic agricultural goods that are stabilizing.
The central bank board's unanimous decision to hold the key rate came amid concerns of a rapid strengthening of the Korean won against the Japanese currency and lingering uncertainty stemming from the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision last month to scale back its bond buying program. The weak yen, which lost a fifth of its value against the won last year, is a major concern among policymakers as it erodes the price competitiveness of Korean exporters against their Japanese rivals.
The BOK governor, however, downplayed the possibility that the bank might adopt policy measures to tackle the weakening Japanese yen, saying that only certain industries like automobiles, steel, and machinery are taking a hit from the yen's fall. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
And the Korean government has laid out plans to verify public utility prices, raising concerns of possible price hikes. During a meeting with other economy-related policymakers on Thursday, Vice Finance Minister Geun-hye said the government has determined how it will assess the fees for 5 public utilities, including electricity, gas, and water. The government is set to receive reports from public firms on their plans to reduce debt by raising fees. A final report will be completed by June. Now, Korea has its sights set on luring more foreign direct investment to boost the local economy, from tax breaks to visa extensions. Our Kim Min-ji has more on the government's promotional plans.
The Korean government on Thursday unveiled a set of measures to draw more foreign direct investment to the nation in a bid to spur economic growth by boosting production and creating jobs. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy's blueprint includes a relaxation of regulations on foreign investment and incentives to encourage global companies to set up their headquarters in Korea. First, the government plans to ease and clarify foreign investment regulations. Many economists have pointed out that one of the biggest obstacles to foreign investment in Korea is the maze of confusing regulations on overseas investors. The government also plans to encourage global enterprises to establish regional headquarters and research and development centers in Korea. For all foreign employees at the headquarters, the government will fix the income tax rate at 17% and extend their visa status to a maximum of 5 years. The blueprint also includes a series of incentives for foreign investors, including quality of life improvements. Finally, the government also plans to map out strategies to attract more foreign investment in the future. Although Korea has seen the amount of foreign direct investment jump in recent years, the country is still far behind other global players. In 2012, foreign direct investment in Korea came to $147 billion, far below the US, which had $3.9 trillion, and Britain at $1.3 trillion. In addition, Korea's foreign direct investment in terms of GDP is the lowest in the OECD. FDI accounted for just 12.7% of GDP in 2012. That puts Korea second to last among the 34 OECD countries and far below top-ranking countries such as Luxembourg, Ireland, and Britain. But with the newly announced plan, Korea is now aiming to become one of the world's top 10 investment destinations in the coming years. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Outbound shipments of information and communications technology products from Korea reached a record high in 2013 as did the trade surplus in the sector. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning said Thursday that ICT exports last year hit nearly $170 billion. That's more than 9% jump on year. Meanwhile, the trade surplus in the sector surged 14%, that is, to $88 billion on year, with imports rising by 3.7%. The ICT sector in 2013 made up 30% of Korea's total exports, with semiconductors and mobile phones leading the pack. China was the most popular destination for Korean ICT products last year. In fact, 2013 was the 12th consecutive year of growth for shipments of ICT goods heading to China. Let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center for a checkup. Ma Bo-kyung, it was a cold one out there today.
That's right, Ji-hye. In fact, today was the coldest day of the season so far, so it doesn't come as a surprise that a cold wave watch is still in effect in the central regions. Now, taking a look at the current conditions, the nation is under the influence of a high-pressure system, which is why we're seeing clear skies across the map. Now, tomorrow morning will be colder than today, but temperatures will begin to rise starting tomorrow afternoon and over the weekend. So we will be getting more warmer weather. Other than that, the mountains in Jeju, which are under a heavy snowfall alert, could get up to 30 centimeters of snow. Looking ahead at tomorrow's readings, Seoul dips to -10 degrees in the morning with a high of -1. Meanwhile, Gwangju and Busan hit 2 and 4 degrees respectively. Moving on to other regions, snowy Jeju makes it to 5 degrees while Mount Kimgang peaks at -9. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after 10.
And that's our broadcast on this Thursday evening. I'm Geun-hye in Seoul. Thank you for watching.